But again, we still go back to basics in this next slide. The most important slide and chart always in our books, and has been in every one of our books, is this 80-year new economy cycle. It's two 40-year demographic booms and busts, and for people who've studied long waves in the past, it used to be called a Kondratiev wave. It used to be two 29 to 30-year commodity cycles. That was more important before we had mass consumption and middle-class consumers being driven by new technologies in this last century. But it used to be two booms and busts in technology commodity cycles. Now it's two booms and busts in generational cycles. So it's been stretched from more like 60 years to 80 years. And that's why a lot of famous authors in the late 80s, early 90s were dead wrong predicting depressions, but at least they were studying a real long-term cycle that repeats itself much better than most of the Wall Street economists. So, again, on this cycle, we're at the peak. We're peaking in this growth boom, 2007, 8, 9, and getting ready to turn down into the shakeout stage. And it's important to understand, and this is something the government does not understand, and why they're going to fail so miserably here in fighting this thing. It is a part of the economy's natural cycle to bubble up when new technologies are moving into the mainstream with a new generation spending surge in the growth boom. That's what the growth booms are about. Radical new technologies moving mainstream for the first time, like automobiles and electricity, et cetera, in the early 1900s through the roaring 20s. Bubbles allow massive capital to go into new business models and experimentation to maximize innovation from these new technologies and to create the business models that will create great productivity for decades in the future. So the economy loves bubbles. Economists hate it. Politicians hate it. People get guilty about them and say we're bad, but the economy loves it. And then when those bubbles are not sustainable and the trends turn down, then the economy pulls the rug out from all these new companies doing all this crazy stuff, and you quickly get down to the business models that are going to survive, and the leaders are created for the future. So this is actually a brutal but a very efficient process for innovation. And what you see is the government's fighting this. They don't want home prices to drop down, or will show where they should be anyway for future generations, and they're going to reduce the cost of business and the cost of living, which is a good thing long term. They don't want all these businesses to go bankrupt. They don't want banks to fail, but all of this has to happen. That's what happened in the 1930s. And as awful as the 1930s was, it spawned a much more middle-class, mainstream boom in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It was unprecedented because of all the efficiency of taking the innovation down, shifting market share and scale to the companies who really proved they could withstand the winter. And then they go into the next boom. So the economy has a logic here. And this downturn, typically lasts like 1929 to 42. It's going to last 12, 13, 14 years. Let's call it from 2008 into 2020 to 23 before we enter the next concerted boom. And that will be, again, a more mainstream boom, a more orderly boom. It will not be a bubble boom. Bubble booms only come once in a lifetime, like in the early 1900s. And depressions and shakeouts from those booms only come once in a lifetime, and deflation is the end result. So in the next year, you're going to hear a lot of confusion. Everybody thinks deflation now, and then if we get a recovery and we get commodity prices bubbling up again and interest rates going up and inflation pressures coming back, which our indicators show will happen, you're going to get people saying, oh, my gosh, we're in a stagflation period and the government, and we're going to go into hyperinflation. No, we end up in deflation. Bubbles deflate. That destroys credit. So real quickly, let me just summarize the logic of what's gone on here, because by our forecast, this downturn in stocks, we were very good at warning our newsletter subscribers and the people who follow us about the real estate slowdown, because people peak in the real estate will show earlier than they do in their spending. But this credit meltdown really kind of was almost like Enron. You remember Enron was healthy till the day they died? This is a breakdown of AAA rated securities, mortgage and debt, collateralized debt mortgage and securities that were rated AAA by agencies because they were very diversified and split up in different tranches of income, and they were insured through credit default swaps, which is not regulated insurance, and so it wasn't real insurance. It's just a lot of people betting, and it got leverage. But you got to understand the origin of this. Remember in the 90s, we had incredible returns in the stock market that equity managers got addicted to. Back then, inflation was higher, and bonds, were yielding 6, 8, 10%. I mean, so fixed income managers could make nice, healthy returns for their pension plans and stuff. Well, in this decade, with the slowdown with stocks at half the value because of this geopolitical cycle, when we still had a boom about as strong as the 90s, but stocks went up half as much, so the returns were cut in half. Fixed income, the Fed pushed rates down to 1% for a long time, and we had further disinflation on our cycles, and fixed income manager all of a sudden making 3, 4, 5. So everybody was starving for returns, and Wall Street created that. They created these CDOs and CMOs, collateralized debt obligations, collateralized mortgage obligations, where they package up this debt and people could get higher returns. And again, with the diversification, the way they packaged it, and the way they got everybody to insure it, and with these credit default swaps and stuff, it ended up looking AAA, even though it wasn't, because people don't realize, as we've been preaching for a long time, that real estate does go down if you look at the long-term picture, and it's gone down dramatically in Japan. So when housing prices started to go down, and particularly with all the bad lending, these securities started showing their true stuff. And it wasn't just that they went bad. The worst part of it was that the hedge funds, then to get the strong equity returns, I mean, the fixed income managers got their stronger returns from buying these mortgage securities and stuff in massive amounts around the world. But the hedge funds, which just raised $2 trillion in the last decade, to make their returns, they had to invest in stuff like this and leverage it 30 to 1, whether they're investing in commodities or stocks or whatever. So this whole thing got levered, and then credit default swaps started being an area of speculation as well, and the whole thing just got nuts. Everybody leveraged up and took undue risk to sustain the returns of the 90s, and that's what's melting down. This isn't about baby boomers failing in their spending yet. It was about baby boomers slowing in their housing spending. But this whole thing was created outside of that. So that's what has started to unfold here and cause us to look like we're going in depression. On the other hand, what the government is doing is trying to stimulate their way out of it, which is what governments are supposed to do. They're not supposed to let us catch a cold or go to bed and work it off. They're supposed to save us from it and give us a cold shot or a flu shot or something. So they're massively stimulating. And the problem is, we've got two scenarios here, but we favor the first one. We favor the fact that this massive stimulus is going to end up causing the economy to turn around in the second half of this year, 2009. And the problem is our inflation indicators, which are a 2.5-year lag for labor force growth, which means the growth before we slowed down in late 2007, says, we've still got inflation pressures. Inflation should be 5 to 6% into early 2010. So if the economy comes back, we think inflation pressure is going to come back. That means interest rates rise, and that hurts home sales and mortgage refinancing. And then you have the flip side of the story, any hint of the economy turning around, and you're going to see commodity prices go up, and that's the last place that hedge funds have been focusing for high returns. And so we think commodity prices could go up faster than people think, as we showed earlier. So scenario one, if the government succeeds, we end up getting inflation pressures and commodity prices going up, and then the government has to stop stimulating and in turn probably turn around and tighten, and then that takes us into a downturn just when baby boomers are really ready to fall off the cliff in spending from 2010 on. So again, it's the perfect storm building, but it's the perfect trap for our government. Now, at worst, if the government cannot create enough stimulus and injections in capital fast enough to offset the meltdown in lending that's already ongoing, then we do go into this depression earlier in 2009. There's too many people forecasting that right now to be honest. Key people from Merrill Lynch were on there saying this is going to be deep and last into 2010, and we're going to see deflation and blah, blah, blah. A poll of people in CNN showed 2 months ago 60% of people thought we're going to move into a depression in the next year. So it's not likely to happen. We probably recover first and get finish this kind of commodity bubble and inflation cycle, which is unique to this cycle, this 30 and 40 together, and then we come down in 2010. We see the worst hitting between late 2009 and late 2010, another stock crash of the magnitude we've seen, and so on. So again, this is not likely to work out like most people are telling you.